Andrew, welcome to People in Legal.
Thanks, David. Great to be here.
Yeah, we caught up a little while ago, and I guess one of the things we're talking about was jumping on this podcast. I'd like, if you could you introduce yourself to our audience, our listeners, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So the name's Andrew Hay, based in Melbourne, in Australia. I'm currently at Thomson Reuters, and I lead our software proposition team. So I've got sort of four segments under me, and across our Asia and emerging markets region, which geographically is quite large. So it's essentially from Australia, all of Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Russia. And sort of my four segments that I've got at the moment, not just legal tech. That's one component. Not the other sort of three are around direct tax, uh, indirect tax, and global trade as well. So I've got a really great team across the region, sort of 4 or 5 different locations, different languages, different cultures. And our team really sort of lead and push the commercial growth of our offerings, as well as be the domain experts and pre-sale sort of assistance with that as well.
Do you ever sleep?
Do I ever sleep? Look,
It's such a big territory. It's a big territory to
no,
cover.
it is. And look, I think a big part of that is around really trusting your team. You got to have good people that you work with, that you trust. And it's not just in my team either. It's across the board. We've got a really big team, with some really key people as well, and not just in my team, but in our sales, marketing, go to market teams, everything as well. So um, it does make it challenging, but I do think trusting people to make the right decisions is always is the forefront of that.
So, I mean, we've had some really great discussions in the past about your career, Andrew, and I mean, I'd love to sort of share with the audience as well about your career journey. I mean, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, I don't think it may be as cool as some of the other ones that I've heard to date on this podcast, which some have been awesome. But mine's probably slightly different, and maybe that's a key thing that I've sort of seen, that each of the ones you've done to date, David, have been sort of pretty different. So for me, I'm probably relatively late to the legal tech party. Around about 4 or so years. But my career, as I started at PwC as a consultant around 22 years ago or so. Um, and that was really in sort of building, supporting, selling, implementing financial reporting software. For me, I think it gave me a pretty good breadth in dealing with customers in different segments, dealing with them sort of at that end-to-end process, as well as in the sort of the product side of having a good understanding and view of the actual product lifecycle as a whole. So whether it be from building, maintaining, updating, implementing, all those sort of things. I got a lot of, I guess, a lot of skills and um, a lot of connections, and then also a lot of learnings, through that process. So I was there for around about 8 or so years. Really loved my time there. I think, as everyone always says, it comes down to the people that you work with, and that was a really, I had a really good fun time there. Work hard, play hard type approach. Um, and then around 2010-ish or so, I came across to Thomson Reuters as part of an acquisition. Um, at the time, I probably wasn't, hugely thrilled about that. But I kind of took a step back a little bit and looked at it as to, well, what's the opportunity here? And for me, as I was coming across, a big part of it was really in that growth of being, not just Australia, but where else could this sort of go? Um, so next sort of step with that as well. So I came across and worked with some really talented people in our UK business at the time. And that was really around changing what we had. It was a sort of a small accounting software that the TR already had in place. And it was really around making that fit for purpose for large corporate reporting in Australia. Lots of whiteboarding, concept design, validation, all that sort of stuff. For me, I loved getting involved and doing those sort of things. That was really fun. Next step along the journey was then sort of rolling that out across in Australia, and was a good fun time. Lots of travel, moving around. A bit younger then, obviously, and I then went through and did a business review for our UK business. They were having a couple of challenges on that same product, but around retention, they were having a lot of problems keeping big customers, and expectations sort of side with that. Went through, did that. Sort of was told, great, thanks. Now go and actually take that into fruition and fix it. Go and do what you said that we should do. Which was actually, it was a challenge, but it was great. And next step from that was around, okay, so we're in a couple of countries. How do we grow this? So my next big thing was around sort of a really aggressive sort of rollout time frame of going, how do we do this? How many countries? Who do we work with? Who are the companies? Why would they buy it? All these sort of things, bringing finance along for the story, getting the money, working with some key partners to speed up the process with that as well. So for me, that was sort of the next 5 years or so, was around going from 2 to 3 countries out to sort of 42 countries. A big component of that was a couple of years that I had in New York, where sort of the big key challenge there to fix was really around changing our approach of going to market, instead of sort of that individual country approach, into going after large multinationals or large shared service centers, and for those larger multi-country, larger enterprise deals sort of approach. Then, after 15 or so years in financial reporting and sort of that financial reporting and tax segment, I kind of wanted to try something new. I've been in the US for a while, was given a couple of options as to, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. But had a young kid, was, potentially looking to have more, and really sort of wanted to move back home, have a bit of a regional role. And there's an opportunity that came up, which was in legal software, in what we call Asia and emerging markets. So covered that before, but Australia, Asia, Middle East, Africa, Russia. And that was around 2020. For me, it was a pretty big step. I'd been in my comfort zone for a fair whack of time. And in 2020 was Melbourne was kind of in its, the big lockdown that kept going on for a while. So, remote learning, getting up to speed was challenging, but, was something new and something fun. And like the big thing for me was really to, hopefully show that, I wasn't a one-trick pony. Then last step is, I guess, moving for that legal segment approach from the region to then sort of taking on some additional portfolios as well for our whole of software segment. So yeah, working with some really great people and enjoying it.
I mean, it's interesting because what you've done is you've actually pivoted from, I guess, the financial products, and I guess that kind of market into a different market. I mean, how did you find the legal tech market and that whole legal market?
It's a good question. And like for me, there are a lot of concepts that were the same, and there are then things that were different. Like I think, and I don't want to be disrespectful to all the legal listeners, but I think that the legal department or segment or firms were potentially slightly behind in sort of, I'll call it sort of that transformation process. A lot of the finance teams and tax teams have gone about, right, we've got to change, you've got to change your headcount, your complete approach. And to do that, you've got to look at things sort of differently. And I think legal there's always early adopters at everything. But I think, the market has sort of changed a little bit now, I think, and we're seeing much more of that. So for me, I think, it was a challenge. It was fun. I was that person asking a lot of the dumb questions. Just for
Yes, you got to.
simple things of getting up to speed in the domain and those things. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I mean, what advice would you give other people that are probably sort of pivoting into that legal tech sort of area?
Yeah, I'd be open to it, definitely. I think there's a lot of growth in the legal space, which is, if you're looking for a career, I think that's always a good thing to keep in mind around, is there growth for me? Is there growth for the segment, the market, all those sort of things? Because if you look at the latter parts of that, it usually means if the answer to those is yes, then there typically is growth for you. But I think the big learning I would have is around its concepts. And if you are good at what you do, but you can apply those concepts, and you can bring people along for the journey, I think that's how you kind of bring it all together.
Now that makes sense. I mean, I guess the communication skills, the ability to actually like analyze, problems and be able to come up with good solutions. I guess that they're universal skills that can apply. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting about some of the challenges you've actually faced in your career to date, Andrew. I mean, you've had a pretty interesting career.
Yeah. Look, maybe I'll kick off on a couple. I think one of the big ones at the moment, and in sort of a regional role, and in particular in a global role as well, is where to focus and how to say no. It sounds like a really easy thing, but it's really not. I think, in any business, there's really that fine line in sort of, finding where your sweet spot of growth is, but also keeping in mind that you've got to experiment a little bit to test and validate like where the new potential areas of growth are, and are we focusing in the right area or are we not? I mean, like in our business now, we've got a huge geographical and cultural diversity too, which is awesome and which is great, but there's almost too much opportunity at times, and there's only finite resources and people and drivers that you've got to play with. So I think that's a big one. But I think the big like the learning sort of side of that, like how you overcome those sort of things, is the big part of it's really around it's how you say no to people, because it's like people in a certain region or segment will always want something that's in there for them, but I think again, bringing people along for the journey is sort of really key to that, of going and saying, this is why, and this is how, and that doesn't necessarily always mean no always. It's just no for now, or it's not a key priority, but it's a secondary priority sort of thing as well. But I think people always want to be able to sell that shiny new toy, and it does become a challenge, because you also don't want to stifle people coming up with ideas and growth, and sometimes there are just bigger priorities of how we how you can make segment growth. So that's probably one part. I think another one of like it's key. I do think it's a key challenge, and it's one that I've sort of faced, and it probably, as I talk to other people as well, it's definitely one that I think probably Australians face in general a little bit more when they're going into a more regional or globally type role, is it's almost sort of kind of that I call it imposter syndrome, but it's probably not the best way to describe it. But like, for example, so I had a global role. I was working very heavily in the US. I moved to New York. I was there for a couple of years, and I think that probably the challenge is I kind of went, wow, what am I doing here? And for me, the big part of it was that Americans in general are quite confident. Well, very confident. They're great at talking themselves up and the positives of what they do and what they bring. I think, and I don't know what they do, but they must do something at school or university or college sort of thing around being able to present. But they present so well, so
Yeah.
articulate. Whereas I think Aussies are a bit more laid back.
Yeah.
There's the tall poppy syndrome type approach of where people like to cut you down a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think putting yourself out there in Australia can at times be challenging. So I think for me, like I actually had to learn that I was in the room for a reason, and it was because I had that domain knowledge, I had that skill, and to sort of be confident in yourself. And I was the one bringing the domain knowledge and the understanding what we actually needed to do to scale that business. So that was I don't know if like it's a challenge sort of thing, but it's something that I faced in my career, that and I come back with learnings, and I think it's trying to match up almost who you are and where you are with who you're with at the same time to match up that style, because I mean, it's pick your audience is probably the way to put it, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, do you think, I mean, do you think the Australian culture's sort of, I guess, is it, how does it, I mean, you just mentioned, I guess we're just talking then about that we have different views in terms of success and presentation things. I mean, how well is that sort of matched in the US frame? I guess, how is that bridge too large? I mean, how do Aussies actually make, how well do they play over there?
I think Aussies play quite well.
Mhm.
Americans love Aussies
Yeah.
it's a sweeping statement if ever I've said one. But I think it's Americans, I think, are, again, more broad sweeping statements, but I think they're not as scared to try things.
Mm.
And sort of thinking of like the growth mindset type approach of
Mm.
well, when something fails, what's the learning? And it's not necessarily seen as a failure.
Mm.
It's seen as a well, what is the learning that I got from this process? So I
Mm.
think that's probably a big key differentiator. I do think Australians in general, from here, if you are looking to move or do something, with Americans, is you kind of need to psych yourself up a little, be
Yeah.
confident,
Yeah.
potentially practice in a mirror while it sounds silly, um,
Oh, good tip.
and all right, just a couple of those key bullets of this is what I'm trying to get in or get out,
Mm.
and make sure you hammer those home, because I think, I don't know, things said with confidence are are believed a lot more, and it's whether technically they're actually right or not. So
Mm.
I don't know. It's a big learning I think Australians probably have in general,
Mm.
of being more confident in what we're actually saying, and we do believe it's true, so we should actually be confident in it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, having come from a background myself a while ago where we sort of tried to tackle the US market from a software, from an export point of view, it was, yeah, I noticed there was some, big differences in the culture. And I think one of the things we did was we actually hired people on the ground there to
Yep.
sort of be a bit of a bridge. I mean, it's actually great because you had a mixture of the Australian culture and the US culture. You had those folks on the ground there.
Well, it's also like America's a very like lots of countries in one almost. There's very
Mm.
different approaches with how personable people are, and
Mm.
in certain different areas of the US as well. So anyway, I'm probably like getting a whole lot of haters now, but
No,
it's
no. I mean, they're just learnings. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all about sharing the learnings, I guess, from different things. And there's going to be the whole bunch of things that people take away from it, which is fantastic. I mean, that's if I was an executive looking to move to the US, I'd be on the phone saying, Andrew, give me some tips.
look, biggest number one learning, if you are literally moving from here to the US, allow a lot of time for your visas, and
Mm.
it can take time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's good tip. Very, very good tip. Yeah, very good tip. I mean, what do you think? I guess from point of view of so just bouncing around a little bit in terms of actually your experiences, Andrew. I mean, you mentioned before that you've got all these different time zones you're working in right now. So you've got a broad geograph. How do you manage and prioritize your time as a leader?
Um, Look, it's a good question. And for me, I think it's probably a lot of it's around trusting your team.
Mm,
Is a big part of it. I'm very careful with how I manage my calendar. I, I I make sure I've got blocks where there's time that work can be done. I think you know, a, a bit of give and take is a big component to it.
mm,
I don't know. I think you just got to make sure that you enable people to make decisions for you,
mm,
which which can be sounds simple, but sometimes getting out of the way, people actually get on and make the right decisions and make the right calls and things as well.
mm,
Um, I try to make sure, like again, with like there's a meeting cancel or something that I'd stay in touch with people. And yeah, I mean, they're just some of the things that I kind of look at.
Yeah, I mean it's a challenging one because I think there's all sorts of methods people use for managing diaries, but I think the key takeaway there is really about trusting the people that you've got working for you and working with you, um, and I guess that
Yeah,
sort of
you do
leads.
need to make sure you again, if you are working in a sorry to jump in, but if you are
Yeah.
working in like a spot where you are across multiple time zones and multiple people and those sort of things,
Mm,
you, you do need to actually look after yourself
mm,
with it as well.
mm,
I mean, it's not sustainable to just keep going and be accessible all the time.
mm,
I mean, I've got young boys at home. I've got
mm,
a wife who's a doctor who is great at what she does. So
mm,
I think there's managing the work life, but there's also then managing sort of the how you get on with it outside of work, and that's a huge big thing with
mm,
managing a regionally diverse team.
mm,
Is being aware of time zones, being aware that someone always loses. If you have Europe, Australia, and the US on a call,
mm,
like from a global perspective, that someone will be up early, someone will be up late.
mm.
Typically, Australia seems to lose in a lot of times, just how
Yes,
practically it works.
I know about
Um,
that.
but well, I mean, to be fair though, that it is kind of then also just practically how it happens, where based on time zones. So, but I think not assuming that people are going to be available at 1 a.m.
Mm,
is key to that. Every now and then, fine, but you just can't you can't always lose. Basically, is the from a
mm.
time zone side.
I mean, people, so that sort of, I guess, leads on to a question around work-life balance. I mean, people, they use this phrase a lot, and I guess, yeah, what does that look like for you?
Look, it's a good question. Hopefully, my wife doesn't listen to this. But look, let's just say I've gotten a lot better. I
Mm,
used to be really bad, really bad. And I think I if I look at earlier on in my career and probably even 5 years ago, I'd really push myself hard. A lot of it was I thought that at the time, outputs meeting the deliverables, high quality work, which obviously are key.
mm,
But I used to just kind of almost get into the zone, big projects, lose track of time,
mm,
um, and almost think being rewarded with more
mm,
responsibility, more promotions, it actually probably set a bit of a bad example for myself.
Mm.
Probably in particular, I had a very global role for 5 or so years,
Mm.
which was with kids is not sustainable at all.
Mm.
I think some learnings that I'd probably say to my younger self would be, it's swings and roundabouts, meaning that it's fine to work hard and you should work hard, but you also need to block a bit of time, look after yourself, a bit of exercise. I think I work much better when my wife specifically says it as well, get my angries out, of getting some exercise, and I actually think a lot better as well.
Yeah.
I've got two young kids, so I think the work life part it's actually important. I block my calendar out for things that are really important and that I want to attend, and I hold to that. I try to wherever I can. I love the fact that phones enable people to be mobile,
Mm.
but that comes with some significant downsides.
Oh, totally.
I think sort of probably 10, 15 years ago, I randomly got two phones. I had a work one and a personal one.
Mm-hmm.
It probably started because I was probably too cheap to be paying for international roaming and calls on my personal phone. But fast forwarding to now, no, boys at home, I actually think it's pretty beneficial because there's sort of blanket times where I'll just put my work phone and essentially my work life away. Dinner times, bedtime. I also, again, having a regional global role previously, like I go through good and bad times with it, of making sure I actually just put my work life away about 2 hours before I go to bed, or I won't sleep properly. I think I personally, again, it's good that I know that and can see that, but it's a big learning I've had. The work life balance thing. It's probably a different sort of part of it as well, but like I think it's sort of a discussion with your wife, partner, spouse, significant other, whatever it is. But I was probably a little selfish at times with my wife, who is a doctor. She packed up, moved to the US with me, essentially out of paused her career. Very different medical systems, so start again, which she did. She retrained, and very, very, very smart cookie. But I'm really grateful for that, and it probably was the best thing for our family. But I'm also now I'm very conscious that sick kids, sport things, those sort of things that I'm making sure that and she'll probably be maybe listen and maybe not necessarily agree, but I try and make sure I do my share, and or if not more than, because she had a big sacrifice with that as well. And I think that's a big part of it's the work personal life balance sort of thing that comes with it.
It sounds like a real great partnership you and your wife have got.
Yeah, look, it's probably very different. I do answer a lot of questions within my medical opinion at times, which she cringes. But I do. It's a good thing that we're both actually not from the same sort of background, and
Oh yeah.
we get home and we have a chat, and it's very different experiences that we've gone through that day. Mine maybe not as life and death at times of things that have gone on, and hers maybe so. So it's I don't know. It's a good. It keeps me grounded, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it sounds like it'd be some interesting conversations to be had. That's for sure. Andrew, I wanted to actually dig into another area of your career the discussions we've actually had before. But I mean, one of the things that came to me was that you were just one of your superpowers is being able to actually really, really nail down propositions. You see lots of companies out there taking products to market, go to market strategies, products to market things. You probably had people come in to pitch products to you as well and things like that. I mean, what does a good pitch? What does a good proposition pitch look like, and what's a bad one look like?
Good question. I think let's maybe start on the bad one. I think a bad one tells you what the product does.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the product does.
Mm-hmm.
And it could look all shiny and all these things. You know, we've got APIs, we've got this, we've got that. But and this is maybe the flip side of what's good. I think a real pitch to me is, and there's two parts to this. I'd say the real part to it is this is what it's actually going to do. So like I'd almost describe this as answer the question. Like answer the question of what it actually does for the person themselves. You know, it actually solves this. It gives you time to do what you should be doing. It, you know, saving headcount. To be honest, most times don't care. People go, okay, but what does it actually do? Like, so for me, I think the big one is, how does it make someone's life better? How does it, and then a pitch perspective is answer the question. If you can answer the question, and probably take people on the journey a little, like the really good pitches that I've seen set the scene. This is the day in the life. This is what you are experiencing. It comes at it with market dynamics. It comes at it with regulatory dynamics. It comes at it then from the individual person. This is what you're doing, how you're doing it, the problem that you've got. And then this is how it will solve it. I think for me, that's hands down how and what a good pitch is.
I mean, following on from that, I mean, what do you think are the biggest mistakes that people when they take your product to market are?
One's not answering the question. I think the other part, and it almost came back to that first thing that I was sort of talking around the focus area, and saying no. I think knowing your sweet spot, knowing your market, your real target market. I think that's probably, and when I've seen it done well, God, it looks good. Like, you know, you've got someone going into a market, they know the customer base, they know how, they know why, and they go after it, and they go after it hard and well, and they eat the market, and they eat it pretty quickly. Like I think the one big thing that I try and say a lot, like I think most customers know why they need something. I'm not sure they know why now. And if you can actually answer the why do you need it now? That I think is where you really add value to a customer. And if you can articulate that very carefully and you know, have tangible reasons why, that is, I think, that's what I see as being good.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think to myself that if back in my day when I was in legal tech and actually taking products to market and things like that, I mean, having someone like you as a mentor or be able to check in with someone like you about the proposition, the pitch, the go-to-market strategy would have been a really valuable thing to do.
Well, very flattering, thank you. And look, I you know, I bounce ideas around with people every now and then. I love, I don't know, I love a conversation. I love you know, working with, I do some, you know, have some it's not consulting or anything, but like have some conversations with people around, you know, their startup, what they're doing, how they're doing it. Again, I think they understand what they're solving, but I think helping somebody work through the problem and the challenge with you can be beneficial.
I mean, where do you see the legal tech industry going in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a good question. It's actually really hard to answer. Like I don't know. I don't think anyone's got that crystal ball at the moment. There's just, and I'm not trying to jump on the bandwagon here, but I do genuinely think there's a huge amount of disruption at the moment with the Gen AI part. AI has been in play for a fairly long time, whether people know it or not. But the Gen AI really is I think it's going to really evolve sort of what happens over that next couple of years. I'm not going to go anywhere near walking sort of too much further than that, because I think things could really change. But like you know just thinking of some things that might shape how it goes, I guess. I think, and I noted this earlier as well, I think that the legal segment is transforming at the moment. I think there's a lot of firms and companies that are actually looking at things sort of holistically, and instead of just coming and saying, I need software to do something faster or do it a bit better, they're actually look at reimagining sort of how they're doing the work and why. So that's interesting. I do think AI is being a big catalyst around people revisiting what their function should do. I think people are very much looking for connected solutions now, of bringing sort of a more end-to-end flow of things. I don't know. I think you'll probably see vendors like Thomson Reuters. We've got a bit of a breadth there as well. So I think there'll probably be a bit of an increase in that of what we'd see. I also think almost that maybe it's a bit of a bit of a convergence, really, of what you'd sort of historically see as sort of being some of the content products, and then being sort of some of the workflow and optimization-y type products. So I can kind of see them potentially, coming a lot closer together. And I don't know. I think, we as a business at TR, I think we're probably pretty uniquely placed, because we do have we've got that breadth, really big breadth and depth in the content, and I think as in particular that the Gen AI type revolution almost that's come through now, that the LLMs, the models that are sort of going through, I really think that we've kind of got an interesting position of having that content breadth to be able to go through and guide and revolutionize sort of where we are. That to me is big, and yeah.
I kind of feel like sometimes that the big defining event for the accounting industry was GST, and it changed a lot of things. It made people actually do accounts. It brought accounting systems more into the more businesses were using accounting systems. There was more collaboration with accountants and things like that. And I sort of feel like that was a major transformation event for the accounting industry. AI acts as the same sort of, it's a connector between the clients and the firms, that kind of thing, because they're both, the average people will sit there and I'll play on ChatGPT and understand, think, well, actually, if I can do this, well, what can my lawyer do for me? And I guess there's that meshing, or that understanding of the same kind of technology. It's become more consumerized.
Yeah, but look, I think that's probably one from a while ago. I think there's another big emerging one, probably not in legal, but I think it's really going to change up how businesses work and the regulators work of around e-invoicing. I think that's really going to be the backbone of it's almost the financial and tax systems. It's going to bring everything front, bring everything and force it to be on books.
Yeah.
And I think then how all the interoperability of all of that works is it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it will be. No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, AI is certainly the word out in the market, and everyone's got an AI type solution. They're sort of saying that this is embedded with AI, or they've got this new AI feature and things. I mean, I guess, what should a good solution look like?
Um, depends what you're trying to solve. It's probably the one part, but I do think a good solution should, again, I'm not just saying this for the sake of saying it, but I think it should try and revolutionize the user experience.
Mhm.
I think, as things evolve and change, I kind of think that the things are going to be processed and flowed more end to end, instead of just solving. I said it earlier, but solve the problem. Instead of
Mm.
just solving the problem, I think it's going to be, you know, whether it be through voice, whether it be through whatever, of saying, "Well, do this now, do this next thing. This is what we typically do. Do you want to do that?"
Mm.
The idea of the old annoying Microsoft, like little, the paperclip sort of thing from years ago,
Yeah.
um, but actually useful, in that regard.
Mm.
I kind of think that, having your almost being as a little sidekick sort of thing will really help.
Mm. I mean, back to your just bouncing around, back to your
Yep.
career, Andrew. I mean, I guess have you got like a memorable experience that really sort of shaped your leadership style and the way you are today?
Um, yeah. I've probably got a couple. And I don't know. Maybe sort of, one early, one late sort of thing. But I think, if I memorable experience that shaped my career. So I think maybe maybe it's a bit of a story. So, um, I remember, joining PwC. It's probably my first engagement that I'd sort of, done the contracting, or, MSA, whatever you want to sort of call it. And I remember getting, the standard, here is the pro forma, plug the client name in, did the scope, good to go.
Mm.
I casually put it on the partner's desk, and he kind of, went at it with a red pen, hardcore went at it. And
Mm.
I think, for me, I listened, I went fine, changed it, went back, did it again.
Mm.
He went at it with a red pen again.
Mm.
But I think the next sort of time, you know, it kind of like just eyeballed me and said, would I sign it?
Mm.
Could obviously see the hesitation in me, and for me, I think I went through and, you know read it basically word for word, was
Mm.
fine, made everything changes, all this sort of stuff, took it back in quite sheepishly, and you didn't even look at
Mm.
it and signed.
Mm.
And like the the big sort of part with that is,
Mm.
like, the learning for me is, don't ever put something in front of someone that you yourself wouldn't sign.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. The other thing as well is really around sort of attention to detail,
Mm.
of, making sure things are right, making sure, like, for me, like, my team probably hate me, but I'm formatting and presentation of stuff. Like,
Mm.
when I'm looking at presentations and things, they just jump out at me, and they
Yeah.
hate me because I nitpick. But I really think that people pick up on certain things like that as well.
Mm.
Um, but that's, I don't know, that's, probably a learning sort of thing that I've kind of had. Um, Another one, again, just a quick story, was, I remember I was, again, helping a UK business out, doing a bit of a review. It was over. Got invited to a client meeting. Heard there'd been some problems. I went, all right, cool, great. Um, Ended up that, the others called in sick, and there was me and a junior support person. And talking with this customer, very big customer, by the way. The hour meeting went to 2.5 hours or so. It's probably the worst meeting I've ever been in, to be honest. Walked out feeling horrible. But I think the big part of it was, and this is probably how it's coming to answer your question a little bit more, was how it sort of guided my style. Was I don't think anyone had ever actually told the client no and said, actually, we could do that, but I don't think we should. And like for me, a big part of my style and is, you know, I'm hopeful, and I believe I am. I'm pretty transparent. I like to share things. I like to have open conversations. I think expectation management is a big one. I think it's across the board, of not just with clients, not just with staff, but kind of everyone. And I think there's trust, and trust is a two-way street always. But I think there's definitely trust, and you build trust by sharing information and letting people know things. But also, you know, working through of, this is what we do and this is what we're good at. If you're needing something else, then sometimes this is not for you. Now, there's obviously follow through as well. When you say you're going to do something, do it. But I mean, that client is still a client. That was probably 10 years ago or so. They're a happy client. Did take a lot of hand holding and a lot of, framing things up. But again, a lot of the expectations. And I think, as I look at hopefully my management sort of style and how I work with people is sort of in that kind of framework of, being very truthful, open and honest, sharing information, and, setting the view of what the expectation of what good is.
I mean, some absolute real nuggets, a lot of nuggets there. And Andrew, I mean, as always, we've had some really great conversations and things. And one of the things we've also talked about is you, potentially doing some podcasts for us as well. So actually working with some of the emerging companies that are actually out there right now and talking to them about their propositions and I guess, and just digging down and I guess understanding where they're coming from and actually, talking to the marketplace about their journey.
Yeah, look, really excited actually. I love talking to people. I love, finding what's going on out in the market and what's going on. And, I think it's a great opportunity. Really appreciate it. And, I think it's going to be fun.
We're looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it. Look, I'd like to thank you so much for your time. As always, you're very generous with knowledge and time and the learnings, and we're so much looking forward to working with you and you joining us on the People Legal team, and have to furnish you with a mug and T-shirt and all the other accoutrements that there are and things like that as well. So
see me out mowing the lawn in it.
That's right, exactly. I mean, just people you're a person in legal. So no, thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to working with you to bring stories to the marketplace.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. And thanks very much for today.
Thanks, Andrew.